Hello, I'm Beelzebub, and welcome to my channel. Sorry for the lack of video this time around, but there's something going wrong with my camera, and I'm not sure what. I'm gonna try to get it fixed as soon as possible, but for now, you're just gonna have to live with hearing my dulcet tones instead of, hearing them and seeing my beautiful face at the same time. But you all know that I'm not the biggest fan of making response videos. But this one just seemed too interesting to pass up. It's called Prayers of an Atheist, which is part of what seems to be a series of videos called Vineyard Stories. There are only 5 videos in the playlist, so I'm guessing it's still pretty new. But for now, let's take a look at what this Prayers of an Atheist video has to say.
Hi, I'm Rob Kizik. I'm from Vineyard Church, Cardiff. Back in May last year, I attended the Kingdom Pursuit conference with my arm in a sling, unfortunately, because I had an accident earlier in the week playing football.
Hi Mark, sorry to hear you hurt your arm. That actually really does suck. While I was stationed over in Germany, I hurt both of my shoulders a couple of times each. I carried my gear wrong on a few occasions and had muscle spasms in my shoulders. So I understand what it's like to be in that kind of pain and have your arm in a sling. I'm glad you're feeling better though.
After the conference, we went out to the pub with a few guys and some of the girls from the church. And during the course of the evening, the girls were talking about the fact that one of them had been healed during the service and during the conference.
I do love a good pub, especially after you do something that makes you feel like you've earned a pint or two or several. But you were still hurt, weren't you? And if you were in the amount of pain, I'm going to go ahead and assume you were still in since your arm was in a sling. I'm going to also assume that you were on some kind of pain relief medication. I don't know if you were on opioids, as is common practice here in America, which leads to its own host of problems, or if you were just taking some over-the-counter pain reliever for the pain. But you're definitely not supposed to mix pain medicine with alcohol. You're just asking for eventual liver failure if you do that. But your potential personal irresponsibility aside, let's talk about what you called the fact that one of the girls at the conference had been healed. I'd be very interested, as a skeptically minded person, to hear exactly what it was she had healed. Was it minor enough that it wasn't something really all that bothersome to her? Did she somehow Jedi mind trick herself into believing that some health issue had been healed? Was it, however unlikely, actually a miraculous healing? I need more information here. I'm sure that the people who already believe as you do are going to readily accept what you say is true, but they aren't the only people on YouTube, and they don't seem to be the people you're really addressing either. You seem to have forgotten about atheists, despite talking about atheists in your video. We are going to need more information than what you gave us. It's simply not enough to come to anything resembling an informed opinion. Maybe we'll get some more information the deeper we get into the video. Let's find out.
They overheard by a couple of guys in the pub called Lewis and Lloyd. That sparked a conversation with the two guys about kind of how can people get healed. That kind of drew my attention in the pub, and I went over to them and started talking to them. And Lloyd kind of quite candidly said to me, well, how come you were at the conference and you weren't healed? And I said, well, actually on the Friday night I was prayed for and by one of the guys, and my arm did improve, my shoulder improved, but it's still kind of, I didn't have full movement and it was still really painful.
That's a pretty fair point from Lloyd. Why weren't you healed? Was your God or whatever intercessor you had on behalf of your God not powerful enough to heal your arm? You can say that your arm improved, but any injury will heal with time. Any injury will feel improved if you have a rush of endorphins. I think you're attributing your arm feeling better to this conference because you want this conference to have made your arm feel better. I remain unconvinced. I think it had much more to do with your arm having time to heal. I'll assume you've been taking proper care of your arm that your doctor instructed you to take. I think that had much more to do with the improvement of your arm than the conference. Maybe a little bit is your brain releasing endorphins, the feel-good chemicals. Maybe your pain meds kicked in during a service. I don't know. Once again, I really don't have enough information to go on.
So one of the other guys Mark said, well, Lloyd, we believe that Jesus heals and the Holy Spirit is here today and works today. So would you like to pray for Rob and see if we can, if his shoulder gets healed? And Lloyd kind of said, well, I'm an atheist, so I'm not really sure about this, but okay.
That's mighty open-minded of Lloyd to be willing to try prayer to see if it can heal Rob. I personally wouldn't, but that's because I've got a lifetime of failed prayer behind me with no answers. Let's see what happens next.
So Mark took him through basically a prayer and got him to lay hands on my shoulder and took him through a prayer praying for healing. And as he laid hands and as he prayed, I just felt this kind of warmth in my shoulder and this easing of kind of the muscles in my shoulder, to the point where before not being able to lift my arm above my shoulder, I suddenly could do kind of windmills completely pain-free.
You felt a warmth in your shoulder after someone laid hands on you. Okay. You're in a pub. I'll be honest and say I have no experience with pubs in the UK, but every bar or pub I've ever been to is usually pretty warm, especially if they're packed. And considering you're at a conference, I'm pretty sure you're not the only group that went to this pub after the day's events were over. So I'll take a wild shot in the dark and say that the pub you were in was full. So not only is the pub you're at likely to be warm because of all the bodies inside of it, Lloyd is also likely pretty warm, including his hands. So there's a couple other assumptions I feel are quite safe to make, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rob. I'm going to assume that you took something for the pain at some point earlier, so it could easily be that as well. You're in a pub, so unless you're being responsible and not drinking while on pain meds, I'm going to assume you had a pint or two. Little known fact about me, I'm quite an experienced drinker, so I'm familiar with the warm feeling you get when you've been drinking. Normally it's in the chest or face, but hey, who's to say you can't feel warmth in an injured part of your body while you're drinking? I have. I've been hurt to the point where it was an irritation, but not quite enough to bother myself with a pain reliever. The injured part of my body felt a bit more warm, so I'm still pretty unimpressed. I've so far heard nothing that could possibly change my mind, but there's still more video left, so let's give some more of it a watch.
As a result of that, Lloyd then said, well, actually, I've got a pain in my shoulder. Could you pray for me? So I prayed for him, and Lloyd said, well, I won't know until the morning whether or not it's better, because it's only really painful in the mornings, but kind of, I'll see. But what sparked from that was then basically a 45-minute conversation about how amazing Jesus is, the fact that Jesus is not some historical figure that kind of lived and died 2,000 years ago, but actually is real and wants to know us, and through the Holy Spirit that we can know Jesus, we can know God, and we can experience the power of God today.
Once again, that's quite open-minded of Lloyd to give prayer a try, this time trying to heal himself. And once again, something I wouldn't bother myself with. But since he wouldn't know until the morning after whether or not it worked, I'm not sure what the point of this part of the story is. I mean, I guess your fellow believers can consider it impressive that you got an atheist asked to be prayed for, but what are the results? Did it work, or is this just kind of a boastful line you're giving? But talking about Jesus like he was a real guy who did miraculous things is meaningless to me, especially since I tend to fall on the side that there is no historical Jesus, or at least certainly not as described in the Bible. But even if there was a Jesus and he did preach, I certainly wouldn't accept claims of miracles because I don't believe in miracles by their definition. I certainly wouldn't accept claims of divinity because I don't believe in the divine, but I'm getting off topic a bit. My point is, if there was a historical, non-divine, non-miracle worker, carpenter named Jesus, he certainly would be dead by now. He's not still living and wanting to know us or us to know him, and if he were, all he needs to do is walk up, shake my hand, and introduce himself. That's how I do it. That's how pretty much everyone in the whole of human history has done it. The only difference now is online introductions has removed the need for face-to-face introduction. But we can still verify the person we're talking to is real in some way because we can trace their IP address. If it's a video call, it's easy to see that there's another person on the other end of the call. Even if it's a catfish, we're still talking to a person, just not who they claim they are. We're almost done, I promise. Let's take a look at the last of the video.
It was really just a phenomenal opportunity that God just broke through in that completely normal way to just reach out to those two guys in the pub. And so what I found was incredible from it was not just the fact that I was healed, but also the fact that actually the courage of Mark and the courage of the girls at the table talking to these guys actually gave me the courage to step out, and as part of a community, how when we see others responding in courage and showing courage, we are then led to show courage as well. And that's been fantastically helpful for me stepping out in my faith.
You think God broke through? I've yet to hear any part of the story where God did anything. I've heard plenty about you and a couple girls talking to these guys, but nothing coming from God. You did the reaching out. Your friends from the conference did the reaching out. But you're talking like you converted these two guys, and I sincerely doubt that's the case at all. And as for your healing, I doubt that as well. I doubt that from that night onward, your arm didn't hurt, particularly because at that night, still, your arm was in a sling and in a great deal of pain, as you put it. But even I consider your increase in courage a good thing. People should be courageous and talk about what they believe in. Why else do we have YouTube channels? How else are you going to put your ideas and beliefs to the test to see if they stand up? Not that I think that's why you did it, because you made it fairly clear in the video that your aim is to evangelize and spread Christianity, but I find it really dishonest the way you spoke about these two atheists, as though you somehow convinced them of your religion. The inference that God worked through you and showed them the light when we don't know and possibly can't know because you didn't follow up with them. But that's all I have for this one. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video. Please leave it a like if you did, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. If you feel so inclined to help me out, consider giving to my Patreon or getting something off my Amazon wishlist. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter to keep up with all my comings and goings, and join my Discord for a chance to talk to yours truly. Take it easy, everyone, and I'll see you all in the next one.